Welcome to a new episode of Books to Last. This episode I'm joined by Izzy from What the Austen as she shares the 5 books she would be cast away with. All books discussed in this episode are listed in the podcast description, so please go and check that out as the episode may contain spoilers. I hope you enjoy. Hello and welcome to Books to Last, the podcast that challenges readers to pick the only 5 books they may take with them when cast away to a mystery remote location. As ever, I'm joined by a book-loving guest, and this episode I'm joined by Izzy. Izzy, welcome to the podcast. It's so great to have you on. Welcome to the podcast. So great to have you on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing so well. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm really excited.
I'm super excited to hear about your book list. It's just going to be so good. We've already been having a really fun discussion before we even hit record. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be good. For the benefit of any listeners who might not be familiar with you or what you do, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about you and books and reading?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Izzy McEwan, and I am the host of the What the Austen podcast, which is a Jane Austen focused podcast. Basically, I kind of focus mostly on her novels, and a lot of character analysis tends to be what I'm driven to, but I have like a fellow Janeite on, who's also a friend of mine, and we just chat about all things Jane Austen, and we do a lot of crossover episodes as well, which is fun. So kind of, I've done some in the past where it's been comparing Jane Austen heroines to Disney princesses, or Jane Austen villains to Disney villains, or even sorting Jane Austen heroines into their Hogwarts houses. So really, we just have a lot of fun with it, and it's kind of the conversations that you'd have with your friend who also likes Jane Austen. That's kind of the approach I like to take on the podcast.
Yeah, and it's a really fun premise. I like your Disney crossover episodes that sort of compare them with Disney characters, because it's always quite funny.
Yeah, I love doing those ones. It is so much fun because they're like 2 great loves of mine, and I'm just like, why not bring them together? Because, you know, I feel like other people would be interested in that.
Yeah, definitely. And it is also quite fun because it's, I mean, like you say, with character analysis, getting to dig into characters is one of the things I really used to like about English literature. And it's also interesting to see how like specific character types and stereotypes are reused over, you know, several hundred years that separate like Jane Austen and Disney stories. It's still the same sort of blueprint of some characters.
Oh my gosh, honestly, like one of the ones that was like so much that was the Beauty and the Beast and Pride and Prejudice links. We were just like, wow, they're so similar. It was bizarre.
Well, you know what they say, there's only, what is it, like 7 or 9 stories in the world, and every piece of fiction is just
there can only be so many original ideas.
Yeah, this is one of the things that get me whenever I read any reviews that say, oh, this is just this book, and I'm like, all books are just some other book.
Literally.
It's just like, that's not a good reason to dislike something.
Yeah, you really got to cut some people some slack, because, you know, we've all got to be inspired from something, so.
Yeah, I literally read a book recently that, I read 2 books by the same author, and they were basically the same story, but I enjoyed the story the first time. I was like, I enjoy it the second time, just dressed up with different characters, that's fine. It doesn't make the other one not as good.
Yeah, I totally feel that. I suppose if you can go from the approach that you do appreciate like specific characters, then it's easy to enjoy the plot just with different ones.
Exactly. I'm very character driven, so, you know, just change the characters and this all works for me. So, I mean, what's the last great book that you read, or are you reading anything good at the moment?
Oh, that's such a great question. So I'd say the last great book that I read, I'm trying to think what the last one that I did finish. Oh, I just finished Mysteries of Udolpho, and I have a podcast episode coming out on that soon. That was a 30-hour long audiobook that I got through. It was intense, but it was honestly such a good book. It was so long, but I was honestly hooked by it. It's like a gothic novel written by Anne Radcliffe, and she is brought up a lot in Northanger Abbey, which is a Jane Austen novel, and it's kind of inspires like the gothic tropes in Northanger Abbey. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to read Mysteries of Udolpho, and I got a friend to do it with me who was going to be on the podcast. Well, she was on the podcast with me to cover it, and it was actually so good. The story's wild. I really recommend if you've not read it. I know it sounds long, but it was just crazy, like some of the stuff that happened. It was really fascinating.
Yeah, I'd never really appreciated, because Northanger Abbey is it the only Jane Austen book I've not read? That and Sanditon, I think they're the only two that I've not read now.
Okay, yes,
Unless,
a lot of people haven't read that one.
yeah, unless you count the fact that I didn't finish Mansfield Park, but that's because I refused to in form of protest against Fanny Price, because I hate her.
I do feel you on that.
I think I read it, and I think I was quite young when I actually read it, so I'd just read Pride and Prejudice, and then because I enjoyed it so much for school, I found Mansfield Park in like our library, and I picked it up to read it. And I think I got maybe a few chapters in when a very upset 14-year-old me stroppily told their English teacher that this was terrible. And I just remember going to my my English teacher, Mrs. Houston Brown. She was an excellent English teacher, and saying, "Yeah, no, shout out to Miss Rich. She is actually the reason why I enjoy English literature. She is the reason, the teacher that got me into it, because I did a year of English before she started teaching me and hated it. So, I liked creative writing, but the English literature side of it was all her. And yeah, I said to her, I was just like, this is awful. She was like, oh, is it Mansfield Park? She's like, I understand, yes. She's just like, you need to read Emma. You just read a bit of Mr. Knightley and it'll make everything better, I promise. Literally. And she was Team Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so that speaks, I can tell you, to already to her, impeccable taste in male love interests.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness, 100%. But yeah, I think Mansfield Park's such a tough one, honestly. I feel like a lot of people read Mansfield Park more for Mary Crawford, which is hilarious because she's not actually, she's like the kind of antagonist really, and it's, yeah, but we're all kind of there for Mary because she's a little bit more fiery and a bit more interesting.
Well, with a character like Fanny Price as your protagonist, and you know what, you want to root for the antagonist, because it was just so. I feel bad because actually it's probably not because she's a bad person. I think I just hated how much of a pushover she was and how much she just like lived at effect in her own life. Like she just sort of let things happen to her and didn't even want to kind of stop them, even though they made her upset. I guess at the beginning, I will say I've read like the first handful of chapters and then gave up. So to go from like Lizzie Bennet to go to Fanny Price was a bit of a leap for me. Maybe I should have warmed up to it. Maybe I should have had Persuasion in between.
Yeah, no, I mean, the significant difference between the two of them, honestly, it's pretty astounding, really. But yeah, I have read it, like, obviously I've read it quite a lot now.
Yeah.
And I try and take different approaches. Like, I try and find the villain in Fanny. I'm like, maybe she's really a bad person. And on my podcast, I get into some, like, real just rants about, like, well, how Fanny could possibly be actually, like, an evil genius. Nobody's buying into it yet, I don't think. But I'm still going to put it out there.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, I was reading theories about how oh god, I've forgotten her name. Different theories on who the bad guy in Encanto is, when obviously the bad guy is the grandmother. It's like I won't be taking questions at this time. She just but either way, I find I don't know anything about Northanger Abbey because I've not read it, except for that it's kind of a not parody but almost satire of Gothic novels, because Jane Austen seemed to love them. And I was recommended another book that sort of kind of shouts out to Northanger Abbey and what it represents in, I think it's The Whispering House, which of the author I've forgotten, but it's like a modern Gothic novel that is very much like they full shout out Northanger Abbey as, oh, she grabs it on her way out the door to go to the Gothic house where all the stuff happens.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's definitely a satire of Gothic, but also like a bit of a defense of novel writing at the time, and specifically women writing novels. So it's an amazing example of like metafiction, I swear down. And I think it's incredible that she was like postmodern before postmodern was a thing.
Yeah, well, she was always well ahead of her time, wasn't she? So I think, I've recently just read Alexander Hamilton by Ron Chernow, and he died when he was 49, I think. And obviously Jane Austen died when she was 41. And I just think there's so much to be said about like the idea of unutilized potential, like people, great, brilliant people dying before their time, and then you never getting to know what they would have done with like another 40 years.
Yeah,
And it's
it
like,
sounds like they're too good. They're too good for the world.
yeah, it's just it's a lot to think about, but yeah, it's good. So Mysteries of Udolpho, which I actually feel like I should. I feel like I want to read it, but I've just myself finished an over 30-hour audiobook, so I'm going in the opposite way into small books for this.
Yeah, I feel like I'm like going more towards like nonfiction again for a little while, and then I'll go back to fiction.
Yeah, I literally just that Alexander Hamilton was like a 900-page historical biography, and then I was just like, no, I need something short. So I immediately read the 130-page The Diving Bell and the Butterfly. And I was like, yeah, no, okay, I need something short. I need something that I can read in one sitting.
I feel you. Yeah, it's definitely like when you go on this like marathon read of something, then you're just like, okay, what do I do now to make sure that I'm not put off reading for the rest of my life? Because that just took up lots of my time. But luckily, honestly, Mysteries of Udolpho is such a good book, and it was so entertaining and hilarious, and the gothic elements were like really good, and the way that the whole story is explained at the end is impeccable. It was better, honestly, because you have your own thoughts about how things are going to be explained. It was better than anything I could have come up with.
Oh, that's okay. You're really selling me on this now. I need to people to I need people
This
to
isn't
stop.
one of my 5, by the way.
I need people to stop selling me on like 800, 900-page books, because I'm literally like, I'm in the first 10% of Anna Karenina, and I'm already like hating myself. Not because it's not good, because I'm actually kind of enjoying the writing. And I know I enjoy like a big long book by the time I get to the end of it, because like one of my all-time favorites is The Count of Monte Cristo, which is, a brick. It's enormous. And the fact that it was so long was part of the reason I loved it, because you get so much depth and detail. But like, I just need to not be weighed down by such. I have to take these books on the train to work. Like I need lighter books.
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant. This is why you go for the audiobook like I did, and then you
Yeah.
can carry it everywhere.
Well, this is the, because I feel like I have to have it all. So then I have the audiobook, but I also have a paper copy, and I read the paper copy whilst I'm listening to the audiobook. It's actually such a nice experience, because it's like someone's telling you a story and you still get to see the words.
So true. I actually used that to increase like my read speed when I was at university. I'd like read and listen to an audiobook, and I'd increase the speed. Now I listen to audiobooks dead fast. Like I flick between like 2.5 and 3. So
oh my god, I could not listen to. Okay, so I mean, don't get me wrong. I listen to stuff at like two times speed is probably my top limit. I listen to podcasts. I cannot listen to podcasts at single speed. They have to be 1.2 or 1.5. And yeah, and but with the audiobooks, I mean, I recently, the best use of that I've done is Shakespeare plays, because I think Shakespeare is meant to be performed, and I was like, yeah, but when am I going to get a chance to see all of the Shakespeare plays on stage? So I thought a good middle ground is the BBC radio team have done like full scale productions with actors and actresses. Of most of his plays, and so if you listen to that whilst also reading it, it's like properly getting to experience the play, and it kind of makes more sense. Also, Much Ado About Nothing with David Tennant as my baby Benedict is just amazing. It's just I just love it. He's my favorite character. He might actually be my most sort of, in terms of literary age, my oldest but boyfriend, going all the way back, because I love him so much. He's so funny. But David Tennant voices him in the audiobook, and it's so good. It's so amazing.
Can't say no to David Tennant, come on.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, he's my Doctor Who. It will always be my Doctor Who.
Yeah, mine too.
always. Christopher Eccleston who?
Literally.
But so anyway, God, massive tangent. Not even got past the main bit yet. Not even got to the main 5 books yet. Okay, this may be a long episode. Okay, so as mentioned before, our guest is going to pick their 5 books that they can take with them when cast away forever. And as always, our guest is not relegated to a desert island unless they very much want to be. But they get to pick where they're going to be castaway to. So Izzy, where do you want to be castaway to?
So I'm not going to pick a desert island. I'm very fair. I would definitely burn like a lobster. Uh, so I think my chosen place would be a cottage in the Lake District, and I kind of get snowed in, which has happened to me. So my family, every Christmas, we used to go to the Lake District for the Christmas period, and one year we did get snowed in. So that'd be ideal. Cottage in the Lake District, snowed in,
That
and I have my
sounds
5 books.
Yeah, that sounds so cozy. Just being like snowed in a cottage in the Lake District. Not even just snowed it, just like Christmas in the Lake District in a cottage with the tree and the. Oh, that sounds amazing. That's just giving me all the hig vibes. It's just giving me all the hig. It's just
Yeah. My parents know how to do Christmas.
Yeah, they really do. Can I come to Christmas next year? I don't want to have to plan my own Christmas. That's the worst part of being an adult, is realizing that all of that Christmas magic that you relied on as a child doesn't just happen.
I know. Oh my gosh, don't even. It's like even getting your own tree. I'm like just like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? Honestly,
Yeah,
so
it's
funny.
it's just rough. It's rough. It's just like, what do you mean I have to plan the Christmas markets we're going to? I don't want to plan I just want to show up.
Literally, like, where is just the Christmas spirit? Why isn't this just a thing?
Yeah. So no, that does sound amazing. So snowed in cottage in the Lake District. I'm actually going to the Lake District next February for the first time. Never been.
Oh my God, I love it.
Yeah, and it's February. There's every chance that it could snow, so I could actually get to live your list. It should be amazing. So, so we have our setting. We have our introduction to where we're going to be staying for ever. Because it is forever. What's the first book you're going to be taking with you?
Okay, so the first book that I'm going to be taking with me, I'm sure is not a surprise, but is going to be Pride and Prejudice. What was difficult was me picking which Jane Austen novel to take, because I didn't want to just like my whole 5 to just be, Jane Austen novels, and I just leave out Mansfield Park, just like. So it was tough, and I was like, you know what, Izzy, there's great books that you've read, just pick one Austen to take with you. So it had to be Pride and Prejudice, because for me, it's just an all-rounder. I love Emma for the characters. I love Persuasion for the writing, because it's just brilliant quality writing. But Pride and Prejudice, I do love the characters. I love the writing. And the plot, it's just to die for. So it just was an all-rounder for me. That had to be the one.
Yeah, it's also the longest one as well, so you get more pages for your money in terms of being cast away forever.
That is so true. Like, I could have taken Emma, which is pretty long, but yeah, I think I'll be doing well with Pride and Prejudice. Also, it's such a comfort read for me. Like, it just takes me back to like when I was younger and I was first getting into Jane Austen. I'm like, I can't not take that with me.
Yeah, I was very sort of similar, because I first read it because I was studying at school, and I loved English literature because the idea of reading for homework was just like amazing for me. It's like, yeah, you mean I'm not going to be procrastinating from homework by reading? I'm actually going to be doing it. That's great. And I remember staying up. I think I read all of Pride and Prejudice in about 3 days, because when you finish your day at 3:00 in the afternoon, there's a lot of time to fit reading.
Oh my God, the dream to be back in school, just more time for reading.
Yeah, I just like, there's sometimes I have to really stop and pinch myself and go, do you remember when you used to think 3:00 was the end of the day?
I know.
But I read it all in about 3 days. I stayed up incredibly late one night. I think it was like really, I think it was probably midnight, 1 a.m, and I'd gotten to the first proposal. Yeah, I think I got to the first proposal. I was like, I can't stop now.
Oh my God, yeah, and that like ends a chapter as well. So it's like you're just drawn to go on. It's like, I can't end here. Like, what's going to be next? So yeah.
Yeah, so lots of great like memories in terms of that. I mean, Pride and Prejudice, everyone knows what it's about, and you obviously mentioned there's like a nostalgia factor. I suppose the most important question is, do you prefer the BBC adaptation or the 2005 film?
Most controversial topic ever. Oh my gosh. No, I love the 1995 version. That was actually my first introduction to Jane Austen. So my mum used to watch it all the time when I was little, and at the time I wasn't like old enough to read Jane Austen myself, so that was kind of like my first introduction before I read the books, and I just loved it, honestly. And now that's another thing, like I could just watch that and it just makes me feel cozy, and I love it. Oh my
Well,
gosh, and Colin
you're
Firth.
not restricted on other kinds of media you could take with you, so I suppose you could always take the box set with you as well.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, luckily now I just have it on like Google Play, whereas when I was younger we had like the video version, which was massive and could have been used as a weapon. So
Oh my god, 6 hours of film on videotape, can you imagine?
it was two-sided, so you opened it and it was like there was a video one side and there was a video the other side, and it had a picture of Elizabeth and Darcy, Colin Firth, and oh my god, I can't remember what her name was, but anyway, and they like
Yeah, I
went
always
around the
forget her
whole of the box, and yeah, it was like a Bible.
Yeah, I forget her name, despite the fact, and I should know her name, despite the fact that like I googled her recently because the mum from Bridgerton reminds me so much of the woman who plays Elizabeth in the BBC one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know whether it's the shape of her face or her expressions, but I was like, I saw it, I was like, is that Elizabeth from the actual? It's not. It's not. But I just remembered like. I don't know why when I first watched Bridgerton, I was just like, I fully had to stop it. I was like, I'm not interested in Daphne and Simon. Go away. I need to know if they got an actual Jane Austen actress in this show.
Oh my god, they've literally missed a trick there. They should have done that.
Imagine all of the little references you could get. It'd be so good. I find it absolutely Bridgerton. We're not talking about Bridgerton. I'm not going to talk about the fact that I find it ridiculous that a bunch of Benidorm actors and actresses are all in Bridgerton, because it's just.
What? Oh my gosh, this is the thing. I don't watch much like stuff on telly, so I'm literally just like, when people tell me some stuff, sometimes I'm like, wait, what? That's mad.
Okay, so Benidorm was like not like a big part of my childhood, but definitely something I've got distinct memories of watching.
Okay.
And there are several actors from Benidorm that are now in Bridgerton, and I find it absolutely hilarious because even though it's not a serious period drama, even though it's like a Netflix take on a period drama, which is actually a rom-com, it's still more serious than Benidorm. And I find it absolutely hilarious that I see them all in their like Regency Georgian attire. And I can just picture them so distinctly in their Benidorm outfits, and it's just hilarious. Yeah. The seamstress is in it. The main butler guy who works for the Queen is in Benidorm as well. Yeah. And who's the other one? There is one more. But I've forgotten. Oh, and the fact that the mum from Benidorm is in Downton Abbey just freaks me out. It's just weird. But yes, anyway.
Popping up everywhere.
Yeah, literally, I can't. My life is just haunted by Benidorm actors in serious roles.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, Pride and Prejudice it's been chosen multiple times on the podcast by people who have differing opinions on the adaptation.
I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine. Don't get me wrong. I don't not like the 2005 one. I do for different reasons. It's like a nice way to kind of enjoy Austen quickly because it's so short, and
yeah,
I don't have anything against it, but if you want the true take, you've got to go down the Colin road.
Yeah, definitely. It's the 6-part BBC series is like the way to do adaptations because it is almost word for word from the book. It is page to screen, exactly.
Oh my gosh, literally. Another recommendation for people, the 2009 Emma. Also astounding. BBC version, honestly. They take the time to get it right, okay?
Yeah, I've also seen, I think I saw that before I actually finished reading Emma as well, because I was trying to read and watch it at the same speed, but I just couldn't. I ended up just staying and watching all of that, and then I read Emma afterwards.
Representation of the book, though, I feel like she's the only person I've ever seen really nail Emma.
Yeah, it is really good. I really enjoy it. I've not seen any other adaptations, to be honest, because I tend to stay away from Austen adaptations because I think I'm too nitpicky and I just find it too easy to find people doing it wrong. And I think that's why I kind of appreciate Bridgerton, because it's not meant to be historically accurate and it's not meant to be like Austen. It's meant to hit all of the Austen sort of vibes and tropes, but like it's not meant to be period, basically.
So true. And you don't have to sit there with anxiety thinking like that doesn't match the, like, I know they are books originally, but you don't have to sit there going that doesn't match the book, because you don't feel as like connected to it. It's okay.
Yeah, it is different. If anything, I actually think the TV series is better than the books. Like, it doesn't happen very often, but I do genuinely think that the way the TV series has adapted the show that the show has adapted the books is better than the originals. Sorry, Julia Quinn, but
Yeah, I can imagine. Actually, I think they did such a good job of the show. So
yeah, they just handle the delicate issues a little bit better with a little bit of 2020 2021 sensitivity in the way that these early 2000s books just don't.
Yeah,
manage.
I can totally imagine that for sure.
But yeah, Pride and Prejudice, a classic, strong start coming out of the gate. What is the second book that you will be taking with you?
Okay, so my second book is, I had to write them down so I could remember, not because I don't love them, but because at one point I was scared I didn't pick 5, and I was like, oh my god, if I only picked 4, what am I going to do? Anyway, I diverse. So the next book on my list is The Collector by John Fowles.
Oh, so I do know this one because I nearly had to study it for A-level English and then I dropped out of school, so I didn't. But I do know what it's about. But for the benefit of any listeners, what is the plot of The Collector by
John? I think it's John Fowles.
John Fowles? No, I know definitely Fowles, but I was like, is it John? Yeah, John Fowles by John Fowles. Sorry, my my listening comprehension actually really isn't that good.
Oh my gosh, I have such a terrible memory for names as well. So it'd be terrible if I didn't get that right. So anyway, so the plot of The Collector is there's basically this guy called Frederick, and the only way I could really compare him is kind of like Larry of Mice and Men. He's a little bit like underdeveloped and just a bit kind of clueless with life and isn't very well educated. But he has a passion for collecting butterflies. And that's kind of how his conversation starts at the start of the book. And he has a job, but then he happens to win like this. I think it was something to do with like when you bet on football. And he won like loads of money from this and became like rich really quickly. So he buys this remote house in the country. And during this process, he becomes fixated on this young girl that he sees called Miranda. And she is a student studying fine art. And for this whole first part of the book, we see everything from Frederick's perspective. And so he moves into this house, but he feels dead lonely. And he wants Miranda there because he believes he's in love with her. And he's like, I'd feel much better if she was with me and I could add her to my collection, which is, he kind of compares it to the butterflies he's collecting. And so basically one day he kind of gets the plan that he's going to kidnap her, which he does do. And he makes this like place in the basement for her to live, like basically like a jail for her to live down there. And he kidnaps her. And obviously she's pretty angry about the whole thing and upset about it. And
understandably so.
Understandably. And he's like, I'm not going to do anything awful and sexual to you. I'm just going to keep you here for a month. Basically, I want you to fall in love with me. And she's just like, what on earth? And she goes through either kind of trying to be nice to him to see if he'll let her go and being really horrible to her to see if he'll let her go. And she's basically just trying everything to see if she can escape the situation that she's in. And basically, it doesn't really work. And he keeps her there. And he does buy her stuff like art supplies and a journal that she can write in because he's trying to make her comfortable. And basically then what happens is it flips to like Miranda's perspective of the whole situation. And hers is more in journal format. So she's like talking about like the past. And she basically had this kind of relationship with this older man called GP. And he was an artist as well. And I believe he was married and he was like starting to form feelings for her. And it was kind of an inappropriate relationship, but had like a very heavy influence on her as a person. She comes across a bit bratty, and at this point, even though it's really uncomfortable, you kind of favor with Frederick, even though you know what he's done is bad. It's such a weird like feeling to have. And so yeah, she's writing all this stuff, and she thinks, okay, maybe he's like kidnapped me for like sexual purposes. If I just give him that, maybe he will let me go. So there's this really awkward like sex scene which doesn't go very well at all because Frederick just isn't. Kind of, I don't want to say he's not capable, but he's kind of not capable of that, and he doesn't understand what's happening. So he gets really angry and upset, and he puts Miranda back into this jail, where she starts getting super sick and ill and coughing. Likely she kind of has like pneumonia, and he basically refuses to get her a doctor because he's scared that they'll be exposed. And he's just kind of saying to her like, I just want you to love me, and I don't understand like why you why we can't just be like, why can't we be happy in all of this lot? And basically Miranda's like writing in her journal that she's terrified she's going to die. And then it kind of finishes and goes back to Frederick, and basically Miranda did die, but he's like really upset about it and thinks, okay, I'm going to kill myself because she's died, and then we'll be like Romeo and Juliet. But then he sides against that because he reads her journal and realizes that Miranda was actually never in love with him. It was never even a possibility because she was kind of harboring feelings for this artist in the past. And so basically he just buries her body in the garden and just goes, oh, well, I'll just kidnap somebody else. And that's how the book ends.
Jesus.
So it sounds like really awful, but it's kind of such a weird journey because, like I said, you feel uncomfortable because you favor Frederick over Miranda for a lot of it, and you don't feel, you kind of want her to fall in love with him as well, if that makes sense. And then it all gets a bit gross at the end, but it's really weird, and you feel like gross about yourself for thinking that way.
Okay, yeah, no, I've not read it. I would be interested to see if I felt that way because I'm often not very good at feeling what the author wants me to feel.
Oh, interesting. I'd love to see if you read it, what you feel then.
Yeah, generally, especially when it comes to like unfair power dynamics, I find it. This is why I sometimes fall out and struggle with some kinds of like modern romance, because these like strange power dynamics that's for some reason I see as completely imbalanced and not at all sexy and actually quite upsetting. Other people just think, oh, but it's so sexy, yeah. And it's just like I'm like, no, I don't see it. Sorry.
Yeah,
so
weird,
I would be interested in it. But then again, I mean, I absolutely adore Beauty and the Beast, and I'm sick of being, well, I get told multiple times how that's technically a story about Stockholm Syndrome. So
oh my gosh, that's so funny. So basically, it's weird because he's not like a powerful person, if that makes sense. He's kind of awkward and just a bit odd. That's why you kind of feel sorry for him, because you know he's not malicious. Like, he doesn't actually ever intend to do any harm to her. He just wants to buy her things and for her to live out her life there so he's not lonely.
Yeah.
Like, I know I'm not I suppose, like, in general, I know it is a bit weird that he, like, kidnaps her and then she dies.
Like, to go back to your earlier comparison, you don't really blame Lenny for killing the puppy because you know he didn't mean to kill the puppy. Maybe slightly, and you maybe slightly don't blame him as much when he accidentally kills Curly's wife, because again, it's the intent's not there, and also she's not very nice. But like, it's one of those things where you sort of, it's weighing up, like the value of human life and freedom with everything. It sounds like a book that makes you think, and I mean that's probably why they get people to study it at school, because it's a couple of schools that I know do have that on their curriculum, because it probably gets you to dig into quite a lot of themes, and there's probably so much to unpack once you've got sort of quotes. And
I would have loved to have studied it. You know, I feel like there's so much to unpack there. And I think at the end when he says he's going to kidnap someone else, then you like question your whole thought process and you're like, oh my gosh, is he actually just like an evil person? And I actually found out that loads of serial killers, like real life serial killers, said that they were like inspired by the book. Like one person even, like, I think he names like his process of kidnapping someone and killing them like a Miranda operation or something, because he'd read the book and he was that fixated on it. So that was a little bit like, oh my god, okay, this is a dangerous book.
Wow, yeah, no, that does definitely put a different spin on it as well, because I listen to one true crime podcast, and that's because a very good friend of mine hosts it, and that is the only reason I go near true crime. Oh, I will never volunteer to go to engage in true crime, like, ever, because I don't find it entertaining, and most of the time it gives me like nightmares. And so much of it is censored around, well, not necessarily, but a lot of it is centered around sort of, I don't know, especially with serial killers and stuff like that. It feels like sexual violence comes into it like way more than you'd maybe expect it to. So yeah, generally as a rule, avoid it. And I did say to my husband was watching the new Jeffrey Dahmer series that they've done. Is it Jeffrey Dahmer? Yeah,
Yes, that's just come out, hasn't it?
Yeah, so he was watching that recently, and I basically just said flat out, just like, I don't want to watch it. If you want to watch it, you can watch it. I'll just read my book, and I won't pay attention to the TV. It's fine. And it's like, we can still spend time together, not doing the same thing. It's fine. And I think part of it did catch my eye briefly, just one of the earlier scenes when I looked up, and I was just a bit like, does it not feel really upsetting that this person died in this horrible way and it's being paraded on television for the consumption and entertainment of the masses? I was like, it's bad enough that they had no dignity in the way they died. I don't see how this improves that. I don't know, that's just me. But then again, maybe it's, having their story be told and known, and maybe it all comes down to the individual and the families and what they feel. But I was just a bit like, if I died like this, I would not want it dramatized and then sold to Netflix for millions of pounds. But that's just me.
I do love true crime, but I do think you have to take ownership as somebody who watches this kind of thing, because I only watch, I do watch the documentaries on like Netflix and things, but the only kind of like podcast and people and YouTubers that I watch on it are people who take a really sympathetic approach to the victims, and they really focus on the fact of like raising money for victims' families, that kind of thing, because I think that's super important. I think you have to take ownership of the fact that you're basically, like you said, like watch and finding a sense of entertainment. I suppose that sounds kind of maybe a grotesque way of thinking about it, but off somebody who's died and been killed and everything. So yeah, I think you have to be dead careful about where you consume that content.
Yeah, definitely. There's like the glamorization of serial killers is, I think when around about the time they cast Zac Efron as Ted Bundy, that was probably when I became completely disillusioned with the idea of ever really trying true crime myself personally, as someone who, like, because the amount of people I just saw, like, I'm not going to repeat some of the stuff I saw on the internet in relation to, some thingy. It's like this, yeah, it's messy. It's messy, and it speaks to a lot of problems in society, and probably where we should that's probably about where we should leave that topic.
Yeah.
Because I could probably go into a long maybe slightly better researched and thought out episode on my issues with true crime. But we're getting off topic. So the second book, The Collector by John Fowles, is another very strong literary fiction choice. Is that like a running theme of your book, of your list? Are you a big fan of literary fiction, or?
I guess so. Like, now I think about it, I suppose so. I didn't actually study that one in school, though. I literally just picked it up on my own back. So yeah, it's weird though. I suppose like both of those are ones that you could study in the curriculum in like Britain.
Yeah, I find sort of literary fiction an interesting genre, especially in like bookstores and libraries and stuff, because it's like, who decides when something stops being a novel and stops becoming literature? Like, where is the line? Who is the authority on that? Does someone have to have a Penguin Classic stamp on their book to be able to do that, or is there some other, like, what's the rules? I'd be interested to know how things get classified that way. But
that's so true. Or like, how long do you have to be dead for in your books like stands the test of time before they can be like, okay, you're established?
How thinky does your book have to be for it to be considered literary fiction? But
yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, so you've got two sort of literary fiction type books to start off with. What's the third book that you'll be taking with you?
So the third book that I'll be taking is actually a non-fiction text, and that is You're a Badass by Jen Sincero.
I have heard about this. Tell me what brief description, what it's about.
Okay, so I mean, I guess it's technically classed as like personal development, self-help kind of book, but honestly, this book changed my life. So when I found this book, I was going through like a really bad period of anxiety. It's when I was at university, actually, and I was really struggling with things. And I don't know why I picked this book up. I think I was just searching for anything. And I'm not saying like it's necessarily going to be the best book for self-help, but it was the right book for me at the right time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's very much all about kind of realizing what your mindset is and why you need to adjust that so that you can have a more like happy, content life. So a lot of it's about kind of the things that you're brought up believing. So say if you're brought up believing that I don't know, that money's like a struggle and you have to work really hard for it, or that maybe if you had like feelings that you have to be perfect at things like your work or something like that. It's kind of about taking those beliefs and recognizing that they've been kind of put upon you by the people that you've been around growing up. So whether that's your parents, your grandparents, your friends growing up, and that you have the opportunity to kind of rewire your mindset in a way that kind of helps you move forward. And honestly, I'm not going to lie to you, it really did change my life, because ever since reading it, I'm not saying I obviously don't struggle with anxiety still, but it's made everything so much more bearable. And it was actually like my first introduction to things like law of attraction. And I don't buy into everything with that, but things like journaling and feeling gratitude in the moment, and how that can actually make like the future easier because you feel very content and happy at the time. All of those things have been totally invaluable to me.
Yeah, definitely. I think especially with books in this sort of area, it's finding the right one for you that speaks the way you need it to and the right moment. I think, yeah, being able to take control of your own life mindset, the way you sort of view things I'm a proper nerd for all things sort of like productivity, motivation, that sort of thing. Like I just love that, and a lot of the things around study skills and productivity are based in your mindset, as whether you've got sort of a fixed or growth mindset, the way you view yourself, the way you talk to yourself and about yourself. And I just think I read also think I haven't read You're About Us, but I actually kind of think I want to try it now just to see, because I like seeing all different perspectives on it, because it's like you say, you don't have to agree with everything in it, but as long as something in there helps you at the time you need to, then it's all good. Yeah.
And I will say that Jen Sinclair is actually hilarious. So if you kind of like Bridget Jones vibe, she's kind of got that same way about her. Like her humor is quite similar, where she talks about just like awkward and like strange scenarios that have happened to you that as a person you can totally relate to, and then kind of how she's like worked through them. So she doesn't go in like, I'm perfect, this is how it is. She's like, life's messy at times, but this is how I've kind of like navigated through it to get to a place where I think,
Yeah.
all is good.
Yeah, and I think I suppose it's nice to have more books out there that sort of advocate for like, not even like, I suppose self-love, but like not using the phrase self-love. Just, I mean, I don't know. For me, I'm just being self-neutral is good enough for me. Like I don't need to adore myself, and I also don't need to hate myself. Somewhere in the middle, just being ambivalent. No, not ambivalent. That's the wrong word. But yeah, I think it's good that someone brings to it like a authentic perspective, because yeah, when people profess to be a guru or perfect at something, I immediately start thinking that's pretty sus. Like, yeah, it's just like, no, I don't believe you. You I think the lady doth protest too much.
I know what you mean. Sometimes it's just about, I think, somebody's wording something in a way that resonates with you so that you can make the decisions for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that sounds like a great one. Have you reread it before? Do you get different things from it with each reading?
I have definitely reread it, and I didn't get different things, but it was more kind of taking me back to the moment when I first read it and all of the reasons why it kind of made me feel better, if that makes sense.
Reaffirming it. So it's like revision, the same way you revise for subjects and sort of learning. Sometimes you've got to top all that up. I follow some people like that, where it's like when you're never a finished product, you never complete. You always have to go back sometimes and reassess where you're coming from and that sort of thing. It's never a fixed thing. You don't just sort of, the same way like therapy and counseling isn't just like a fix all. You don't just go to therapy and counseling for a bit and go, yeah, fix now, and then that's it. That's the end of it. You don't need to think about it anymore. Yeah, as someone who's had a lot of counseling, it is good sometimes, even though it can be uncomfortable and not very fun, to really dig into why you are the way you are, and also be very honest about how you are to begin with, and sometimes confronting the people, usually your family, usually your upbringing, that have contributed towards that, for good and for ill, and sometimes on purpose and sometimes not on purpose, but either way, it happens.
No, exactly. And nobody ever does it like to cause anybody harm, but obviously sometimes you get to a point in your life where you kind of have adopted it so much into your own life that you have to try and rewrite some of it, like based off your own reality.
Yeah, I say this all the time. I'm like, I don't believe for a second that anyone has children and then they look at their child in their arms as a baby and they think, yes, I am determined to be a terrible parent. I am going to cause my child neurosis and mental thing. No one ever sets out to make mistakes or do things intentionally, or at least I really hope they don't. I hope there isn't someone out there who proves me wrong in that. But yeah, like I say, intentional, not intentional, all that. It all still needs digging out, and like you say, you've got to rewrite some of it sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I mean, a non-fiction pick. It's not very often non-fiction makes it into this, although I think we did have one list that was majority non-fiction, which was unusual.
Oh, really? Oh, that sounds fascinating. I might have to listen to that episode.
Yeah, every now and then we get sort of one non-fiction book, but we had the ladies on from Get Into the Books, and their list was mainly non-fiction because they read mainly non-fiction. So yeah, it was interesting one. It's a lot of really fascinating list actually, because it's like spirituality and that sort of thing. But either way, we're on your list now. And we're on your fourth book. So what is the fourth book you'll be taking with you?
Fourth book, again, is going to be one that most people probably know, and that is Order of the Phoenix, so part of the Harry Potter series. And I will just say I do not agree with any of J.K. Rowling's beliefs on a lot of topics that she talks about. I won't get too much
everything
into that,
it seems these days.
Exactly. But I really appreciate the books, and I do really enjoy them and the whole world of Harry Potter. It's just unfortunate they are connected to her.
Yeah. I find Order of the Phoenix an interesting choice because I did not like it when I read it, and I've only recently, as an adult, come to appreciate it more because Mike from Potterless Podcast, who does an excellent rereading of the series, had someone on, a guest on, who pointed out that Harry's suffering from PTSD, and he's having a perfectly natural reaction to a trauma event, and the people around him are not helping or understanding that. But I'm interested to know why it's your favourite of the series, because it's not my favourite of the series. The third one is my favourite, if anyone was wondering. But why is it yours?
So for me, it's my favourite for probably like two reasons. I'd say one, because Luna's actually like my favourite character, and I feel like we get to see so much of her in this one. So I do really appreciate that. And I think also I just love how it ends in the explanation of the fact that even though it's awful staying with the Dursleys, that it's Harry's mum's love is like sealed in the protection by his aunt, like accepting him in. And I knew that's like right at the end, but for me, I'm just like, oh my God, that's actually like, that is magical to me. Like, I'm just like, that's so nice. And such a nice way to think about it, because like most people can sit there and be like, why would you stay there? Why wouldn't you just go and live with like the Weasleys full time? But it's actually for his own safety that he stays with them. It's like sealing that protection.
Yeah, it is. I think I found it really fascinating. I think it's an interesting dynamic because, like I say, there is a reason why he can't leave, but I also think it's also kind of sad because even though they gave Petunia her scene in the movie where she basically tries to get exonerated for treating Harry like trash for his entire 17 years of life, it's such a horrible place to be in, and the fact that he is kind of actually trapped there because basically his choice is that or death is like, it's kind of really it's like got a lot of symbolism of basically what some abusive relationships and families can feel like it feels like you can feel so trapped and tied into them, and literally but leaving them is almost worse because of the mental repercussions or whatever repercussions. Like, I think from a symbolism point of view, very interesting, but like the idea that his love, that is his mum's love, is, I suppose, still protecting him now, like it did when he was a baby. It's nice. I also have lots of love for Luna Lovegood. I like that she's not your usual stuck up, really too smart and know it all Ravenclaw. I like the idea that Ravenclaw really does symbolize wisdom, not just being, don't get me wrong, I say this with full love. I am a nerd, but like not just being a nerd who really likes school and is really good at like thingy. Like, Luna is considered weird and she's considered like an outcast and people don't treat her very nicely, but she's actually got so much embodied wisdom. She is a wise person and she kind of helps Harry so much in that book, and she doesn't get enough credit for it.
I think I love Luna, and I think she really embraces what it is to be an individual and like be yourself, and even if it is quirky and weird. And I also love in the film, right, when I was younger, I had the exact same Converse as she does with the strawberries on. I literally had those ones. I was literally, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm just like Luna. But yeah, so I do love that about the about that. I also love that we learn more about Snape and why he's kind of has this angst against Harry. Like when he goes to the pensive and he sees the memory, and I just like, I feel like that just throws another kind of element into the story. I think Order of the Phoenix is really good at like moving things forward for where they need to be for like Deathly Hallows.
Yeah, definitely. It's a like I say, it's a good installment. It's also the longest one in the series.
It is. It's
yeah.
really long. I was so surprised that I love it because my favorite film's actually Goblet of Fire. So I was really shocked when Order of the Phoenix ended up being my favorite book.
It's a really interesting one, and also one that I've not heard people say as their favorite before. So it's an interesting one to have on the list.
Oh, there we go.
So, what is the fifth and final book on your list?
So my last book is Atonement by Ian McEwan.
Oh my god. Okay, now you're going to really have to sell me on this because I hate that book so much. Sorry. I shouldn't have said that. That's really yeah, no, thank you. Please tell me why you love Atonement. Change my mind.
Oh my gosh. So I feel like this was totally unintentional, but I'm kind of starting to realize that maybe I have a inclination towards people who have like postmodern elements in their book. But anyway, I am fascinated by the concept that if you wrote something like your own biography or your own history, and there's no longer anyone there to contradict it, say they've all died, and there's no things that contradict what you're saying, you can almost write a new reality and a new history. And for me, that like blows my mind a little bit because I'm literally just like, it's only kind of like reality if other people can confirm that it is, if that makes sense.
Yes, it is a fascinating concept, and the pinnacle of what you'd consider an unreliable narrator. Someone who a narrator who you can't take their word for granted in the same way you can take other people. And I suppose that's basically what biographies are, right? They're being written from the perspective of the person autobiographies are, because they're being written from the perspective of the person they're about. Obviously Atonement is a fictional one. For the benefit of listeners, Atonement is about it's about Bryony Tallis and her family, I suppose, and something she does when she's very young, and basically how it spawns repercussions afterwards. Brian is the reason I dislike the book. This is
really dislikable. I will admit that, but I love it because it made me feel so much. Like I just felt so like devastated. Like by the end, like she doesn't.
Devastated is the correct emotion for this book.
And that's the thing. Like I feel like I can appreciate a book because it made me feel just so sad and devastated. Like I don't have to come away feeling happy to be like, wow, that was a really powerful book that I feel like I could reread again and just have all those emotions again. But yeah, it's I'm sorry, I'll let you continue.
No, that's pretty much sort of it. I think maybe the reason why I probably dislike this, which I should caveat is the reason why I dislike most books that I read around the similar time, is because I did study this one, but it was a book that I studied despite the fact I did not enjoy it. So when I love a book, I love the fact that I study it. When I dislike a book, I hate it all the more for the fact that I studied it. So Of Mice and Men, couldn't stand Of Mice and Men. It was the worst term of my life when I had to basically study that at school. Atonement, I fell asleep reading this book multiple times, and when I wasn't falling asleep, I was angry, deeply, deeply angry at the injustice of it all. The best part, my favourite part, which I actually did really enjoy, and I thought it was so cleverly written, and I mean, that's why McEwan is just a master of literary fiction. You have got a lot of literary fiction in this with a dash of...
I really do, although I haven't studied any of them.
Yeah. But the chapter that is from Robbie's point of view, set in the war, that is just one chapter, despite the fact it spans many, many pages. I think probably maybe even 100 pages, with no chapter breaks. It's just one continuous chunk. I thought was a really fascinating way to represent the war, how endless it felt, and ultimately, spoiler alert, how eventually it didn't matter that he had gone through so much and survived so much, because in the end, he didn't survive, and he was never, vindicated.
And the day before, because it's like Dunkirk, isn't it? It's literally the day before they all get away. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it's just, for me, it felt like, in the same way that Twilight, for all it is not a literary fiction or work of literary masterpiece, as much as I enjoy Twilight, the part in New Moon where they symbolise depression with basically 6 blank pages with just the months on them, it's fascinating in simplicity, because that is basically, a representation of how some people experienced depression, in the same way representing Robbie's time at war as one endless and ultimately heartbreaking section of a wider story is symbolically very, very beautiful, and just kind of, it's simple and elegant in the way it's sort of done. And I liked Robbie as a narrator. I was very sad when we lost him, when we didn't have him as a narrator anymore.
Yeah,
he went back to Brian.
Yeah, she's... It almost feels like you can be calm and not just be like expecting bad things to happen, or like the next drama or the next crisis, because Brian is just like leaves destruction in a wake.
Yeah, and I think even though at the beginning, the fact that they made her so intelligent made me hate her so much more, because she knew what she was doing was wrong, and she destroyed someone's life, and she didn't lift a finger to change the fact that she destroyed someone's life at all, through decades, when she could have. And then
become successful. That's what annoys me the most, that she gets everything she wanted, really.
Yeah, and then at the end, when she writes her alternative ending for how she wanted it to have ended, even though she actually didn't do. When they say actions, not words, her actions did not show that she wanted it to end that way. She wrote the ending she wanted, and then the fact that she basically admits in the sort of, postscript afterwards that was the end of the book that would be quote unquote published. We know that it's not. It's a book within a book story. It kind of made me hate her, and even whilst I could have maybe made excuses for, it was the time and her age and her immaturity and all that sort of stuff, and she wasn't the only one, other people were also, part of it as well. I could have maybe almost understood when we got to the end where she basically decided she was going to write out all of her wrongs, and it was all fixed because they were happy in the end. And then
she tries to justify it all. She's like, because I've done this, it justifies. It's like, no, they're dead. Like,
yeah,
you can't mix that now.
And it was despicable, basically, when I got to the end of it. And I think it's probably not. I don't think I am talented enough to dispute that Ian McEwan knows what he's doing when he writes a book, because he's written a lot of books. I'm pretty sure he's won a lot of awards. He clearly knows what he's doing. So it's not that the book's badly written. I think it's just the plot that I have the issue with, and it's not because the plot's unrealistic or not the way it should have been, because it is. It's very clever. But yeah, I think I
So
need.
do you prefer to come away from reading a book feeling a sense of like happiness or a sense of resolution? Is it
Yeah,
because it ends on like a not a nice note?
yeah, even then, I can still deal with books that end sadly. I mean, I don't hate the Divergent series, and everyone knows how that ended. But I think it's part of it is the fact that I'm a very character-driven reader, and without a character that I really like to attach to, I really struggled because even though I did like Robbie, I didn't like him enough to carry the rest of the book. I didn't like whoever I've forgotten Keira Knightley's character's
Cecilia.
Cecilia. I liked Cecilia, but again, I only really liked her, I think, because Robbie liked her.
Oh God, no, I couldn't stand Cecilia for
Yeah,
months.
I liked her because Robbie liked her, basically, I wanted them to end up together because he wanted them to end up together. If he'd have wanted someone else, I probably wouldn't have cared about her.
What do you mean? I can have such a strong appreciation though for characters, even if I dislike them. Like I appreciate them because I dislike them so much, and I'm like that still is good enough for me as like a character
Yeah.
appreciation of a character. I'm like, gosh, I hate you, and that's so fabulous.
Yeah, I did. I mean, like, this is it's. I always say that when I get to the end of a book, I'm like, right, I hated this, but the fact that I feel so strongly about it is just proof that it's a good book. Because if it wasn't a good book, I wouldn't care. So yeah, that's just basic. My issue, those are my issues with it. I don't think that's a reason to tell people not to read it. It's just the reason why I didn't enjoy it at the time, and I definitely understand why you would choose it. I imagine it's a book you'd get so much out of it. It is beautifully written. You can see how much I resent saying all of that. The listeners can't see, but as you can see how much I resent giving Atonement its due. Um, and yeah, I think I should probably give Ian McEwan another chance because I've literally not touched any of his books since I read this because of how much I hated Brian. And I mean, I think in my review it says something along the lines of I hate him more than I hate Bella Swan, and I mean,
Ooh.
yeah, it was a lot.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Sorry, I feel really bad. I shouldn't have. I'm not. I shouldn't bring my opinions to the podcast. But so yeah,
It's your podcast. That's what you can.
I should. Yeah, I shouldn't bring it, but I did, and I guess it's out there now. Um, but yeah, I definitely think there's definitely. I hadn't appreciated it until you just said it, but the idea that without being able to be, I suppose, um, challenged. Contradicted or challenged. Contradicted was the word I was looking for. Thank you. Contradicted or challenged. Someone could essentially rewrite history because, yeah, having read some more historical biographies or histories, and because I studied history at school, you come to appreciate that the whole history is written by the winners is absolutely true, and the way that people perceive history is because of the words put down and about it, and the idea that someone could completely and utterly rewrite history because of the absence of other witnesses or accounts is kind of scary.
It's terrifying. This is what I mean. This is like such an incredible concept. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so bizarre. Like you could be like, oh, I've hated everything that's happened to me, and I've been so awful to people. So I'm going to move somewhere really remote, and then I'm going to basically tell all the people around me this whole new narrative. And you could completely change. I know it wouldn't change what those people back there think of you, but you could change who you are as a person based off what you could fiction, basically. Isn't that the most, honestly? I literally just watched the film The Lost King, which is about Richard III, about the woman who found him under the car park.
Is that the one that Steve Coogan's done?
Maybe. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, go on, sorry.
Okay, so basically a lot of her argument in it is that Richard III has been hard done by writers in history, that all of the stuff really nasty about him was a lot of Tudor propaganda.
Shakespeare's fault.
Shakespeare's writing, obviously, I mean, Shakespeare's account of him is really grotesque. So, you know what I mean? I think it's honestly super fascinating, though, that it can be changed so much, and it's such a crime.
Yeah, it is. Horrible Histories do a little bit of that as well. They do a little bit of Richard III image revamp, because they do his Richard III story is song that Horrible Histories do for him is very much like, oh, how he has been his reputation has been ruined by the way he's been portrayed in media by people who basically didn't like him. The reason why I mentioned the Steve Coogan one is because I was listening to Steve Coogan, otherwise known as Alan Partridge, and he has recently produced a film or documentary with the person who found Richard III, the woman who led the search, because he wanted to share her real story, because she kind of got her very pivotal role got wiped from.
Yeah, that's the same film. That's exactly what the film's about.
Oh yeah, Leicester University have properly pulled out the royal family's line of disavowal. Basically, they've released a statement that they've literally used the recollections may vary line. The royal family, God, no. Genuinely.
That's like when you've been like so awful and sexist and just the worst people ever, and then you're just like, oh, you know, I guess it's perception. It's like, no, you were bad people.
The fact that they literally used the royal family's line of recollections may vary as a way of basically saying, well, we don't think we erased her.
She's like, are you just confirming it, really?
Yeah, I obviously have no stakes in Leicester University. I don't really know anything about them. I have no first-hand experience. I'm just talking about the anecdotes. My opinions don't represent the opinions of everyone else. But it is an interesting sort of story, and like you say, it ties in very well with the idea of rewriting history. So those are your 5 books. Would you want to just quickly recap all 5 of them for people listening so they can?
Sure. So number 1 was Pride and Prejudice. Number 2 was, oh my gosh, I've like forgot now. Pride and Prejudice. Then I'll have to get my nose back up. It's honestly The Collector. Then it was You're a Badass, and then it was Order of the Phoenix, and then Atonement. So that was all 5, which I do appreciate. Yes, probably a lot of people could have studied those. I didn't personally study them. That's not why I picked them. But I guess I kind of wish I had, because I enjoyed them so much.
Yeah, nothing makes you love a book more than pulling a 5-word quote out of it and then writing a page of essay about what that quote could mean in different interpretations.
To be fair, I do love that whole. I mean, I went to university and studied English literature, so I'm not opposed to like studying books for sure.
I completely agree. I once read, I think, a page and a half off a 3-word quote from Pride and Prejudice.
It's totally possible because Jane Austen's a genius. I'll just put it out there.
Yeah, exactly. Just talk about the connotations of every single word and the symbolism of color. It's awesome. It's great. I just, love it. Okay, so did you have any honorable mentions? Any books that you almost picked but didn't quite? So obviously,
I would have picked another Jane Austen novel, and I would have probably gone for Persuasion because I think it's her best written work. I think it's a fantastic novel. The only reason I didn't pick it is because a lot of it's quite melancholy, and I thought if I'm on my own in a remote location, it's maybe not the one that I want alongside, Atonement making me kind of upset.
I was going to say, but a serial killer and someone who's falsely accused of rape.
Exactly. This is why I need Pride and Prejudice to just, and then I need You're a Badass to pick me back out of the slump. Yeah.
Okay, there's maths. There's maths in this. There's definitely, it's been considered.
With logic here, okay?
Yeah, so, Persuasion, I definitely agree. It's a great classic example of second chance romance.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful, and she's honestly, I really recommend reading it. Above watching, especially the latest adaptation, please read the book because it's beautiful.
No intention of watching that adaptation based on yours and several other people whose opinion I respect's opinions on it. I don't plan on wasting my time.
Yeah, especially if you love Persuasion, like don't do it to yourself, please. And then another one that I probably put on there is it's actually something that I got into like more recently, and that's the Heartstopper graphic novels. I just love that story. Honestly, it melted my heart. So yeah, I just love those ones. And it was a little bit different, a graphic novel over, reading all of these thick texts that I've got, these thick texts that I could study.
They are beautiful, the Heartstopper ones as well. They're like really, I always like gravitate towards them in the shop. I've not read them, but like the colored scheme and just the design, it's a soothing sort of cover and novel, and I've seen nothing but love for that series. I probably should get around to it eventually, but I just already have too many books to read.
My little brother kind of like he was like, you have to watch this series with me. And then I watched it, and then he got me the books as well. So I was just like, oh, just falling in love with this.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I love the idea of like young people reading and getting into this sort of stuff as well, especially young boys, because the drop off, I don't have the statistics to hand, especially not the most recent ones, but the drop off in reading from childhood to adulthood, and then specifically from primary school to secondary school in boys, is a crime, and someone needs to do something about it.
Yeah, I can totally imagine, actually, to be perfectly honest with you. My little brother does a lot of reading, though. So.
Yeah, Rick Riordan cannot do all of this work by himself, people. He needs help.
He's definitely more into the gothic than I am. Like, I do love a gothic novel, but he very much like embraces like dark academia, whereas I'm more light academia. So
I take it he's probably neck deep in Babel at the moment then. Or
likely, honestly. He has like, all of his books are like black and red, and then mine are all like colourful, as you can see behind me.
Contrast, you gotta love contrast.
Absolutely.
Oh, I wish my brother was a reader. We could share books. That'd be nice.
Yeah, it's so good. He gives me so many recommendations, and then I'm always just like, oh gosh, I have too much to read.
You're gonna have to get him on the podcast. He sounds like the ideal person.
Yeah, I think you'd love him for sure.
But yeah, so
he wouldn't have picked any of these books. So. Yeah.
Well,
he would have picked book 3 of Harry Potter as well. So.
Well, I mean, it's because the only one that Voldemort isn't in. So like, it's why it's the best one. It's not as high stakes.
I love it.
Okay, so yeah, Persuasion, Heartstopper. Any other honorable mentions?
I know you're going to really hate me for this, but it's actually a true crime one, and it was called I'll Be Gone in the Dark, and it's by a woman called Michelle McNamara. I feel like I've just messed up her name entirely. But
I do know who it is. McNamara?
I think it's McNamara, but I don't know for sure.
It's been chosen on the podcast before, actually. I never hate anyone for their choices. Everyone is entitled to their own choices. It's the reason why I don't give any caveats as to what books anyone can choose. There's no blacklisting or any of that sort of thing, because these are people's own choices. And yeah, and I completely get that people enjoy true crime for completely valid reasons. I mean, I love Only Murders in the Building, but I think that's because it's fake true crime. It's not real true crime. It's false crime.
False crime.
it's false crime. It's fiction. But I do like the vibe of it, I suppose. So I guess I'm a tourist. I'm a true crime tourist, clearly. But yes, yeah, I'll Be Gone in the Dark. I've heard really good praise for that as well, and it's supposed to be very well researched, very well written book that I've heard. So.
I have never read a book a book like this kind of nonfiction that I felt so close to the author. Like the way that she writes, it was like I was talking to a friend. And what's really sad about it is she dies before she finishes the book, and also before they actually find out who the Golden State Killer is. So that's what the whole book's about. It's like her hunt for the Golden State Killer. And the way that they actually discover who it is the way that she always thought they would. It's such like a powerful read. Like I knew that she passed away before she finished it, before I started the book. It's such a testament to her. Like if I was her family member, I'd find such comfort in the writing, because you feel her in the book. It's really amazing.
Yeah, it's definitely that is tragic. It's very sad that she never gets to see the fruition of it. But I suppose if there is a life after this, which whatever you believe it may be, there's a chance she knows, and a chance she gets to see it. So there is that, and Justice still got thingy. She was part of the vehicle of justice in that particular scenario, so it's all good.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are your honorable mentions. If people wanted to hear you talk about more books, maybe more Jane Austen books or other books, whereabouts could they find you?
So you can find me on Instagram at What the Austen. I share a lot of Jane Austen content on there. A lot of it to do with like what I'm sharing on the podcast, which is also What the Austen podcast. And you can find that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, YouTube, wherever you can usually find a podcast, I'm there. So yeah, and I talk lots of Jane Austen stuff. And you can also find me on Instagram at Izzy McEwan. If maybe you're not into Jane Austen, but you just want to see general posts. I try to explore kind of bookish places and stately homes or, cool libraries. That tends to be my vibe. So if you just want some inspiration of where to travel to in the UK, then maybe hit me up on that side.
It is a really lovely account. I was having a quick look at it because I am a National Trust member as well. So I do like my stately homes and my bookish places. National Trust sites are the natural homes for bookish people. I think they're just ideal. They're just amazing. So yeah, definitely go check Izzy out in all those places. Check out her podcast, all social media, and if you wanted to listen to more episodes of the podcast, we are available wherever podcasts are found. We're also available on YouTube, and follow us on our social media on Twitter and Instagram at Books to Last Pod. I will be fully transparent and say that most of the Twitter posts are pre-scheduled because I have come away from Twitter because it is not good for my mental health. But if you want a response, Instagram is the place to go. So yeah, definitely go check out the podcast there. Go check out Izzy's podcast. And yeah, thank you so much for your time, Izzy. It's been amazing. It's been so much fun. Thank you for sharing your list of really, yeah, I love like that literary fiction's making more of a play on the podcast because, I mean, we get a good range, but definitely a genre that we've not tapped into as much. So
I can imagine. I feel like I really just show my like literature grad vibes there.
Definitely, but it's all a good thing. Definitely a good thing. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing list, listeners. So thank you so much for listening, and until next time, bye for now.
Bye, thanks.